I'll call the Public Health and Safety Committee for Monday, September 16th, 2024 to order. The first order of business is to approve the minutes of our previous meetings, both 7:15 of '24 and 8:19 of '24, copies of which were in the packets. Did anyone notice any revisions or adjustments that they need to the minutes? If not, I'll take a motion to approve them both.
I would move to approve.
Motion from Watson, is there a second? Second from Lukens. Further discussion? Seeing none, members in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? None are opposed, so both sets of minutes are approved. Item number 2 is to consider approval or denial of various license applications. You'll see in the batch, we have a number of events. We have one recommended denial this evening. Under our ordinance, license applicants recommended for denial after review have the right to approach the committee and discuss the denial with us. The denial recommendation was for Jonathan Betts Rojas. He, I believe, was on a refer back from council, had missed the meeting where we were going to consider his license. And so the council decided to give him another chance to come and network with the committee. So Jonathan Betts Rojas, are you with us this evening? Jonathan Betts Rojas? Okay, we'll let the record show he has not appeared. And so then his denial would have to go back to the next council meeting then, but we have afforded that opportunity. Also in the packet, you have a number of special events and for things like Harvest, all of the 2025 events, I believe, for Wausau events, Harvest Fest, Beer and Bacon, Holiday Parade, Blues Fest, 4th of July, Chalk Fest, Concerts on the Square, Exhibitor. Let me just see if there's any others. I think picnic licenses for short-term events. Those licenses are all coming in. And also pending a recommendation was a Class B beer and liquor license for CW Fly Bags. Applicant was CW Sports Entertainment LLC. It is a bar basically that specializes in indoor cornhole and tournaments. The subcommittee met with the owner of the establishment immediately prior to this meeting and recommended unanimous approval of that license. We were able to network with him and did not note any concerns with his plan of operation. So he is in the batch as well for that. With that, I would accept a motion to accept or deny licenses as recommended by staff. Oh, go ahead, Chief.
When would those special events that are 2025 events, those go through council at some point as a consent?
October.
I wonder if there's the potential to delay those approvals maybe till November, given they're 25, because part of our exercises in budget planning include the potential that we might come forward and be like, those approvals would be contingent upon the city being able to recoup some of the costs for law enforcement services. But if we approve those events and they're officially in the book for 2025, it might be mitigating our ability to set some of those expectations or requirements.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Right. Are you requesting fund allocations for the 2025 budget to recover some of the overtime for staffing some of that?
Well, part of our budgetary exercise that we're going through is sitting down and discussing how to recoup funds or generate revenues. And from a police department standpoint, some of ours are proposals on how to recoup some of the dollars that we spend annually on special events, overtime to staff those special events. So I just wouldn't want to put the cart in front of the horse and then hamstring the council in making a budgetary decision through the budgetary workshops to have revenues that are no longer available to them because now we've approved events and they're in the book. And then I would think we would be hamstringing ourselves to any other events that might come in that would require, we would hold them to the same standard of the ones that were already approved, so.
Well, the event, I mean, what they're asking us to approve right now is the event permit, the permits for the event, which, I mean, the events, would the events take place or not either way? I mean, we're just authorizing the event to take place, right? So, you know, I think the discussion, the budgetary discussion is valid as far as how to recover costs associated with events, especially the largest ones that are time intense. But that really is also a discussion, not only about money, it's a discussion about event safety. In the past, we've talked about, based on the estimated attendance at an event, what the staffing level really should be versus what it's been. And we've been, in some of those larger events, woefully short. If there were some, major event to take place in connection with the event, we'd have to mobilize resources at the time of the call rather than staff the event. So,
Yeah, I think my concern would be that the council approve the permits, it contingent upon, if there's some other methodology in the future to be able to recoup some of those costs, those permits would be contingent upon an agreement that they're going to cover the cost of these things potentially. Like, who knows what that might look like or in what way that would exist. I would just be concerned that if prior to the budget workshop and being able to discuss with the council or the finance committee what that might look like, if we've already approved the permits, that we might be kind
Right.
of cutting our legs off.
I
So-
think proactively, as part of that budget exercise, it would be a good idea to meet with event organizers. Get together some of your largest event organizers and kind of bounce some of these ideas off them. Find out what the structure of some type of cost sharing could look like so that you have something to report to the finance committee when you get to the budget workshop. Because they're going to be, asked to either allocate funding or not. And I think it would be valuable for them to know if there was some type of a cost share on the horizon where they could either share that cost with someone or recover part of their cost. I think maybe that discussion happening sooner than later. I think we could approve those event permits and then with the recommendation that the clerk's office agendize them at the council level for the month of November versus October to give you time to get through the finance workshops. They all happen in October.
I think that'd be perfect.
We'll just delay the progression to the council until the budget workshops have wrapped up. They all happen in October. So if we took it to a November council meeting, they'd have results then? Okay, so the clerk's in agreement on that. So,
Thank you.
okay. Committee members, anything else on the events then? If not, with a motion and a second on the floor, then to accept or deny licenses as recommended by staff. Members in favor signify by saying aye.
We do.
Aye.
Oh, I thought we had a motion.
No, I don't have one.
We didn't take one? Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, motion to approve? Motion from Larson, is there a second? Second by Watson. Members in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? None are opposed, that motion carries. And then we have the understanding that those will go to council in November, which allows time for the budget workshop discussions to take place.
Just the 2025 events.
Correct. Yes, the rest of them are already happening. So item number 3 is presentation and discussion from the fire department on tactical emergency medical services.
So lately, members of the Wausau Fire Department that are trained as TEMS members have been called upon and been busy with a series of events. And I've come to realize that not everybody knows what TEMS stands for, Tactical Emergency Medical Services. So I invited Lieutenant Ambrosius, the leader of the TEMS unit for the Wausau Fire Department, to give a quick brief report on what TEMS.
Perfect. I'm excited. We'll welcome Lieutenant Ambrosius up. This committee was actually on the founding end of the TEMS program when it became obvious that, we had an event in town where EMS was asked to stage down the street until the site was clear and wasn't able to enter the site, which may have been hot. And so then at that point, through CIP, we purchased the equipment and were able to get some training and get the scenario such that that isn't the case anymore and that they can make entry, with the police at the same time if they need to, which then, was big for Wausau. So welcome.
Yeah, hi there. Thank you. Thanks for having me. So Deputy Chief approached me about a week ago, 2 weeks ago, and asked if I would give a presentation. Anytime I'm asked to give a presentation about the TEMS group, I'm more than thrilled. I try to educate anyone I can about this group. It's kind of we're kind of like the redhead stepchildren of the fire department. People don't know about us. They know we exist. We wear this fancy equipment, but they really don't know exactly what we do. So I kind of think this all started back in 1999. Unfortunately, we were all around when Columbine happened. If you saw the videos, you saw students are falling out of the building, coming out bleeding, and you saw ambulances parked blocks away. You saw all these SWAT operators with their weapons, kind of staging, kind of moving into the building in groups. But there was, when the officers actually got in there, they were unfortunately, confronted with just mass chaos, a lot of wounded individuals, and they weren't there able to treat them. And if the officers would have got struck with rounds, they wouldn't have been able to, treat themselves initially right away either. They would have been under gunfire. So the whole country kind of stopped, and one of the quotes that came kind of from it was, "When seconds counts, we're only minutes away." So unfortunately, when that happens, you want people there as quickly as possible. So in 2012, SAFER and the Wausau Fire Department kind of got together, and we decided, along with the Sheriff's Department, hey, let's join up and see if the SWAT team would actually want to incorporate paramedics within that organization. And they were thrilled. At first, it was kind of like a learning lesson, just because we're kind of figuring each other out. Officers know, just like firefighters, when we show up on calls and we see police officers, we're like wondering, hey, what do you need from us? What can we assist each other with? Same thing happened when we got on the SWAT team. At first, we kind of staged back in the Bearcat and the big armored vehicle that you see on scenes on high-risk calls where the SWAT team gets there. So we're kind of staging back, and then after a while, they're like, well, hey, like talking to us, what can you guys provide besides just medical aid? And we said, well, we're not armed, we don't carry firearms, and our goal is to literally provide aid to the officers if they get wounded, or any citizens or subjects that, get wounded during that confrontation. So then like, well, hey, you guys are really good at breaching doors. You guys are the fire department. You guys literally train on how to get through windows and doors and throw ladders. So all of a sudden they started giving us the battering ram. We started getting into the stack with them. All of a sudden they realized that we know how to use controllers and play video games, and we incorporated tech. So the SWAT team has multiple different cameras and technologies, drones. So if we're not armed, hey, let's provide any aid that we can besides the medical care. Let's provide it on that other end. So it's kind of crazy. I think the biggest thing that came from the Thames group forming and joining up with the SWAT team is just the integration of law enforcement with fire rescue. There's been always, we go on calls, we meet at the hospital, we'll talk to the officers, ask them questions like, hey, why do you guys do this? And they'll vice versa ask us why we do what we do, and we kind of have to blend. The integration's just been awesome when we're able to talk to each other on calls and kind of form that group and cohesion. So now on first name basis, when we go on calls, they know who we are. We meet up at the Sheriff's Department, they know who we are. It's pretty awesome. We're one of the only Thames groups in the state that initially within like a year or two, we're in the stack. We're in the line of personnel of SWAT operators, breaching the doors for them and providing whatever we can. Just like Deputy Chief said, we've been involved with the Secret Service lately, 2 times this last month alone. We had a presidential visit a couple times last couple years. One of the biggest takebacks was one of the Secret Service agents came up to me. We're all meeting up, and he said, "Hey, can I pull back the medics after we give our briefing?" And we're at CWA, and the president's coming in, and we're like, "Yeah, the Secret Service wants to talk to the firefighters," and we're kind of laughing. So he meets up with us, and he says, "Hey, if you guys don't know, we don't have any medical aid ourselves. So if something goes down here, besides providing care to the wounded, the officers, the people who are here, can you also think about us?" And I just didn't realize, like, there's just not a lot of paramedics that are attached to, SWAT teams or tactical teams of that level. So it's been pretty awesome. Sometimes when we get a call out, there's just not a lot of officers who are able to show up. We might drive the Bearcat, the big armored vehicle, for them. So we're taking, again, that support role in any way we can. It's just been an awesome integration with the SWAT team and that tactical EMS, not just here in the city, but all of Marathon County. If you saw in the packet also, the Marathon County SWAT team 2 years ago became an alert status, and at first I didn't even know what that meant. But it's literally a kind of like a state-funded SWAT team that's within this Marathon County. So we were selected by the state Marathon County SWAT team to provide equipment, resources at a higher level across all of their neighboring counties. So whenever another local jurisdiction or SWAT team needs help, they'll call Marathon County. When we show up on these calls, they don't have paramedics with them usually. So since there's 8 of us now on the Thames team, we'll literally split up and provide aid as much as we can to the different SWAT teams. So it's been awesome to be able to support the law enforcement brothers and sisters on high-risk calls.
It's amazing. I am so proud that you guys have been able to grow that team to that level. When we first talked about Thames, we wondered as a committee if there would be interest in the department to commit to a Thames effort, because it takes the caregiving component that you are used to with EMS, and it adds the danger component that you get with police. And so I think the fact that your team and their teams are able to make entry together and render aid faster Even when we looked at the equipment purchase, the equipment that it takes for Thames in terms of personal protection is so different.
Yeah.
And I mean, the average ambulance is not responding with bulletproof gear. And, you guys have all that stuff. So the fact that, those things are integrated and working together, that is huge for our community. I'm so proud of that. Chief Barnes?
So just a couple of thoughts. One, I think every ambulance does have tactical helmets and body armor at this point in time because we never know when they're going to be needed.
Oh, that's true.
But I would just, like, the idea that we have a Thames team now, I'm not sure that language works for me when I think about the SWAT team because you're a member of the SWAT team. You're not a Thames team that's attached to the SWAT team, and I think that's the way
Kind
our
of.
SWAT teams and our mobile field force, which are also our crowd control and riot control, like those are situations in which individuals are likely to become hurt. Either we end up hurting someone or they're likely to become hurt. And I would just encourage you to think of it similar to, this will be my only military analogy, great series, Band of Brothers, if you've ever seen that. You have units that go out and there's always the person that doesn't carry a gun whose job it is. They don't need a gun because their job is to render aid. But they're all part of the same unit. And that's the way I view our firefighter, paramedics and our fire department partners on that team. They're viewed as just a regular member of that team that just provides a different function. So we're very fortunate to be leaders when it comes to our tactical teams are looked at throughout the state as the leaders, those that other organizations strive to be able to perform in the same manner. So it's fantastic. Thank you.
It's great. And what I'll say I remember is that, at one point, there was a wave of innovation that started within Wausau Fire. And really taking them from this level, which was already high, to this level, which is the top, and really making them an employer of choice, for new candidates. And that was part of that wave of
Yep.
innovative ideas that came right from the crews that do the work. And at the time, we could not have been more inspired by that. So it was just something that we were, I think, proud to fund and equip and see the department grow into.
Yeah, it's been awesome. We just joined 2 more members onto the actual team. They go through a whole process, like a physical agility test, just like the SWAT officers do, same exact test. And both of them have just over 1 year of experience. So they were thrilled to get on. It was kind of one of their hiring questions that they had was, hey, like, when can you get on the Thames group on the SWAT team during their application process? So it's been a huge recruitment tool also.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Anybody else have questions for Lieutenant Ambrosia? All right. Well, thank you so much
Yeah,
for that
thank you. Yeah,
presentation.
thank you so much.
Fantastic. Item number 4 is discussion and possible action granting temporary extension of premise. And the agent is Chatterbox Incorporated. Agent is Mike Moss at Chatterbox. But we have Matt Brewer with us, so come on up. Every year, Chatterbox and Matt's 101 Pub work together to have a joint event, right? So
Yeah.
started out as, I think it started as a Halloween party, didn't
It
it?
did,
So,
yep.
where they submit a block party request. They want to close off Elm Street between the two for a period of time and extend their premises into that area. Now, I did read your event application. It sounds like you have 4 participating establishments?
Interestingly, yes, but the 2, they're sort of on the outskirts. They're a block and a half away.
Right.
We have an event that you can walk up and down the street, but the main event that we want to manage between 2nd and 3rd on Elm, and that's what we're asking to manage today.
Okay, and so, but with the operating on 2nd and 3rd between the other 2 and your 2, they aren't carrying open intox between, are they?
They will not, and they
No.
have not.
Right, your stuff is just in Elm between
Absolutely.
your 2 bars? Okay.
Absolutely.
That is what we've always allowed? And I think, is this the 3rd time?
This is 3rd year, yeah.
3rd year, so it's not been a problem the first 2 years. I mean, this is something that we've done for them, and they've managed it real well, as 2 owners willing to work together. Does anyone have questions about the block party for Matt? Go ahead, Cody.
Yeah, the one question, and just so we can make sure that we extend the premise correctly, what is the exact definition of where each premise is extending, so we can get that on the license?
So it'll be on Elm Street between 2nd and 3rd.
I think each one had half of Elm, is how
Yep.
we worked it.
That's how we worked it.
Did
We
you
kinda-
split it down the middle?
Yep, absolutely.
So, yep, so Chatterbox had the south side, and 101 had the north side
North side.
of Elm, between 2nd and 3rd, and just during the event hours. So, Yep. Originally, we were trying to figure out how we could do it. Were we going to have to wristband the people, or what were we going to do? And now they have it down pat, so
We have.
it's good.
And just clarity on timing, we like to close the street earlier in the morning just to prevent cars from parking on that street because
Right.
it is a fairly busy street. So I realize the timing for it, we were going to keep it to the hours that you want to for
Mm-hmm.
obviously public safety and other things, but want to make sure we can close the street earlier in the day so we don't have anybody that we have to worry about cars and other things. So
Yep, I think we've been good with that historically, right?
Yeah,
The
and
last 2 years.
On the application, it says you can close it 2 hours before the event starts.
For that business block party permit? I think so too, because they've had that same thing. They've been doing that on Third Street out here, like downtown. They've been doing it. And I think West Sider did one on Quah Street.
They did.
They did the same thing, just to make sure people aren't parked in there and getting trapped in there
Absolutely.
during the event. So, anybody else have questions on the event at all? Okay. If not, is there a motion to
I'll make the
extend
motion.
or grant the extension? Motion from
I'll
Larson?
make the motion, yeah.
Is there a second? Second by Lukens. Further discussion? Seeing none? Members in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye, opposed? None are opposed, that motion carries.
Thanks,
Thank
folks.
you, good luck
Appreciate
with
it.
your event.
Thank you.
Let's see here. Item number 5 is discussion and possible action on amending the Wausau Municipal Code, Chapter 1.08.045 and 9.04.010, disorderly conduct and/or battery against election officials, election registration officials, or clerks and state statutes adopted. And this actually comes to us from the clerk's office surrounding our upcoming elections to keep poll workers safe. I guess Caitlin or Cody, did you want to talk about this effort a little bit?
Yeah, so we are planning on having 150 of our 200 poll workers assigned and at the poll site in November. But the state legislature, they are actually changing state statutes to protect poll workers and protect them from physical threats and violence, but that does not go into effect until next July. So we are looking at updating our local ordinance to include this protection until that state statute goes into effect
Sure.
next summer.
Okay.
Because we will have 3 elections, not just November, but most likely February and April, where they will not be protected.
Sure. Okay. I think that's a sadly necessary but valuable effort. Does anybody have any questions on that? If not, I'll take a motion to approve it.
I'll make the motion to approve. I think it's like you say, sadly, in these times, it's a necessity.
Sad,
so.
sad that you need it, but it feels like you do. So a
Yes.
motion from Larson, second from Watson. Further discussion? Seeing none, members in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None are opposed. That motion carries. Item 6 is the Tavern Activities Report for the month of August. Anything notable on the report that you wanted to talk with us about, Chief?
No, I think everything in there is pretty self-explanatory. I can try and answer any questions if there are any.
Okay. Anything that you've seen on the report that you want to talk to the chief about, committee members? It did look fairly straightforward this time. Not too bad. I mean, for being summer, usually it picks up more. Okay, so then we'll place his report on file. That doesn't need to be acted on. Item 7 then is the community outreach update. We'll bring up our community outreach coordinator, Tracy. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. My report for this month is kind of uneventful in terms of any dramatic changes in numbers. We had about 81% of people sheltered. At Catholic Charities, there was 13 guests identified as brand new to the shelter, which is down by 1 from last month. They themselves were at capacity, a total of, 94%. They did have 84 turnaways last month, which was a lot, but we've seen more. And in terms of my efforts, I did house 4 additional individuals last month and met with approximately 17 individuals, providing them resources in our community. I do want to note that when the women's community reported their numbers for this month, they actually added a kind of a side note that approximately 21 adults, mostly women, mostly from Marathon County, were trying to seek shelter with their services, and they were not a good fit for that shelter. So those individuals were referred to other homeless resources in our community. So I found that to be an interestingly high number.
Yes.
I hadn't gotten a report like that from the women's community in months past, so it was a big enough number for them to report that to me as something that they recognized this last month. Yeah,
Hopefully, that's not an emerging trend, because we already are underserved on women's programs.
correct. So, other than that, I don't really have anything real significant to report this month. I do also just want to note that we've had a conversation with one of our community partners in terms of community on call for this winter. And we're still in talking with them to be the host site, the primary host site for every day we would need to activate community on call versus trying to find churches or other establishments to host and then provide volunteers for. So we're still working out some of the details with that, and as soon as I have a confirmation from them and we have all that worked out, I'll report that back to this committee.
Excellent. Also, I think notable was that we recognized the opening of Bridge Street Mission at their new facility last week, so they're growing. So I took a tour of that facility at the end of last week. I missed their opening because I had a little emergency in my private sector office, but to scheduled a tour after, and just really impressive work that they have underway to get that facility enlarged and look at expanding their service offerings, which it's great to see that happening with our nonprofit partners because we need those services.
Absolutely.
Chief Barnes.
Sticking with the theme of underserved population in our community, I wish I had good news to report, but in the realm of just things to think about in this, how things change within this concept of homelessness, I did receive notice from the Department of Corrections within the last week or so, and I've reached out to the Evers administration to ask for a rethinking of this, in that we have what's called a TLP, temporary living placement, that if an individual exits prison, has served their debt to society, and they don't have appropriate housing, they go for a period of months into a TLP, at which point they're connected with services, they have a roof over their head, they're housed from day one upon leaving prison. That the number of beds for men in the TLP in Wausau is going to be reduced, and the female TLP is going to be closed altogether effective October 31st. And my struggle with that is we know that female unhoused population are at more risk than the male population is to becoming victimized. And the idea that there is now a pipeline from prison to homelessness in Wausau for women that didn't exist before. Like, less women are coming out of prison and coming to Wausau. That housed it had the ability to house 3 women at a time. The average capacity was 2, but that just doesn't exist anymore. I feel like that's a piece of data that this committee would be interested in.
Was that a budgetary concern? I mean, why was that decision made? Because homelessness is a problem statewide.
I am certain it's a budgetary issue. I know that there are counties that are losing both their male facilities and their female facilities. So I'm appreciative that we get to keep 10 beds of male TLP, but the idea that the struggle I have is you can have 2 people that commit the same crime. They both get sentenced to prison. They both go to prison. They get out of prison. And one's a man and one's a woman. And the man leaves prison into a TLP to be directed to resources and provided shelter and a roof over their head, and the woman is told, we have nothing for you, there's the street. And I don't think that's the intention behind what they're doing, but that's going to be, there's no 2 ways around that. The prison pipeline is going to add to our homeless population as a result of that.
If that is the practical outcome that we already can foresee, communities statewide are grappling with these concerns. I think there's value in engaging our state representatives. If there is, I think it would be wise of us to craft a resolution that the council can get behind, so that the council can speak with one voice and say, we have been working tirelessly to address these issues in our community. Please don't make them worse. And, if that is something that other communities wish to camp on with us, sometimes there's strength in numbers with that kind of stuff. If it's a budgetary issue, I think we need to engage those folks that represent this area, who certainly should understand that we've been doing everything we can do to make it better. And creating a setback like that for us or for any Wisconsin community is not a good idea. So, you know, I mean, if you feel there's value in getting something in front of the council, I would think that we all would be amenable to that. I mean, so that we can formally establish some type of communication. Sarah?
I just wondered, like, how many of those, like, units are, so that was just for Wausau, right?
Correct.
And so are there, like, units in Weston, like, or is it county-based?
So that would be for the county. It
Okay,
just so
the county.
happens that the units
Are
are
here.
Are here.
Okay. Because I didn't know if it was possible to, like, maybe get other, like, Weston, Croninwetter to also address it in one voice for Marathon County? Or maybe partner with the county board, too?
Yeah, and I don't think it's premature to share this information with you. It's been shared with us and communicated that here are the dates that this is, like, the policy decision has been made. What I haven't had the opportunity to do is find out whether my communication and probably communication from other chiefs or sheriffs to the Department of Corrections has the potential to create change in what that policy would be. I want to give them a brief opportunity to really reflect on the actual consequences of that decision. But I didn't want to wait a month to share information with
Was
this
it
committee.
forecasted that that's for the 2025 fiscal? Or is that immediate? When does that change supposed to be happening?
The changes to the mail beds was effective immediately on the date that I received that email, which was a week or so ago, and the closing of the female TOP house was effective October 31st, 2024.
Wow.
So relatively immediately.
Mid-budget year,
Correct.
mid-budget. So, I mean, that's interesting. You know, I mean, that begs the question if there's even time for the council to engage with anyone before we start to feel that impact. And then, of course, if that's taking effect at the end of October, it's on the cusp of the coldest season of the year. So, I mean, how heartless could that be? So, I don't know, disappointing to see that coming, and hopefully they rethink that plan. You know, if they won't and you feel that you need some legislative advocacy from the council to help you, feel free to ask.
Thank you.
I guess, so. Okay, anything else on that? Okay, and did you have any other segments of your report that you wanted to highlight, Tracy?
No, I mean, just something to note. I mean, I do really believe that we're moving the needle here in Wausau. I did have some repeat clients come to me today, and notably, they said they were at the shelter, and they noticed that there was a lot of faces that they didn't recognize because, well, there's new people in the community, but that they recognized that, geez, a lot of people must be getting housing. So, I mean, I do think that we're making an impact here. It might not seem like that to the public, but I can tell you that we are.
Yeah.
So,
Yep. So, well, your numbers are in excess of 50.
Oh, yeah.
Right, so I mean, we're really I feel like we're making strides. So, I mean, there's something that we talk about in our task force all the time called functional zero. And that really means getting help and resources to people who want it, that are willing to accept it, recognizing that's not 100%. But for everyone that's willing to grab onto that hand up and get themselves onto that better path, what a blessing it is in the community that we have you. So that is fantastic. The Finance Committee, I think last week, and Alder McElhaney's on that committee, she might have some insight, but the Finance Committee at their last meeting was talking just briefly about our allocation and our funding that we've issued to Catholic Charities to stand up the night center and the day center for that 2-year span of time. And there was actually a request, I think, to extend some additional funding, to extend the timeline of those services. And I believe the outcome of the discussion in finance was that they would be looking for us in hand with them to create a contract, if before we would additionally fund Catholic Charities for more of the same, that they would be looking for us to work with them to craft some type of established contractual agreement where much like we did with parks, the expectations of both parties are outlined. We know what we are expecting in exchange for the dollars, that there's some measurable outcomes. And there may even, depending on what form that contract takes, for lack of performance, would there be clawback measures? I don't know. But I think they're looking to have those discussions to measure the impact of the money And, that's certainly a reasonable request that we've received from finance. So, I mean, I could see us in the future meeting with them in joint session to consider things like this. I mean, obviously, they spend the money and we do the vetting, but I think if we work it together, we can get to a good place. I guess, Becky, did you have anything to add from that meeting?
No, it's just that there is a contract expectation. I don't know what was done before, but I believe if we can codify expectations, it's good for both parties.
I think so. I mean, it's good that we both know what's expected of one another in terms of outcomes and, even services. So I think that's helpful that there's no ambiguity between the parties, especially since we both as organizations have been working at this for over a year now to try to move the needle, which we're moving it, but, it's always helpful to quantify like where we're moving it to and where we could be doing better. So, does anybody else have comment on Tracy's report at all? If not, we place her report on file. Thank you for everything you do for us. That is the last item on our agenda, so I would take a motion to adjourn. Motion from Watson, is there a second? Second from Lukens. Members in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? None are opposed. We'll stand adjourned then. Thanks, everyone.